Alright, so a question that you might have about gardening is, I guess, more or less the whole process, right? But as far as starting seeds, somewhat recently, I got one of these trays again. It's a Jiffy branded, but you don't have to. I don't think it really matters the brand as long as the plastic is like relatively sturdy. It has these little cells in it, as you can possibly see, and I've been using a mixture of the expandable pellets that kind of transform into mini pots, and Root Riot cubes. In my opinion, either one, works just fine. I suppose just looking at this right now, the Root Riot ones definitely are sprouted, and I fairly recently put those ones in. So maybe those are a little better. Anywho, the way I organize it is I have a note on my phone, and I do this rather carefully, so I always keep it in this exact position. I don't turn this at all when I'm handling it, because I basically just label internally, mentally label the rows as A, B, C, and D, and then the columns as 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So I have a little chart in my phone that I use to keep track of all the seeds. Earlier in this season, I didn't do that, and now I have a handful of tomato plants that I don't really know which variety they are. At the time, I didn't really care about it. Now I kind of do. So that's one of the things with seed starting. Another is, if you can, the brand names are rather expensive in my opinion, but if you're going to do this, for the long haul, then I think that's a good thing. But getting a branded heat mat is that honestly, the one I got is about the size of this tray, so that's pretty nice. That does help to speed up germination with some seeds. So it'll just make things move along quicker, and some seeds, by my understanding, kind of need the heat in order to sprout anyway. Another thing I would recommend, and this completely varies in price of how you set it up, how you do it, everything, but for seed starting or anything that's indoors, I would recommend getting a grow light. So it's a full spectrum light, and you put it somewhere above the area. It doesn't really matter, as long as it's near the seedlings. One thing to note on that is it doesn't matter if your seedlings are by a window, under a grow light, anything like that. As the seeds and plants grow, they will gravitate towards that light. So for instance, the grow light that I currently have only really fits, one side or the other. It's square. So for instance, you can kind of see this one down here has definitely started gravitating over here to get to the light, and this I did a turnaround relatively recently because it was also gravitating that way. Same thing will happen though if you leave plants in a window. The only time that I have noticed that will not happen is if you have a grow light directly above the plants you're trying to grow, or if they're outside. It does happen a little bit with plants that are outside, but it's not nearly, at least in my opinion, it's not as bad. Most seeds, in my experience, do not take a month to germinate. Some seed packets will say 7 to 14 days, some will say 7 to 28 days. I know some seedlings like for trees, I believe, take way longer than that even. In my experience, seedlings, I give them about a week or so, maybe a little longer. I suppose I haven't really kept track of which of these I've taken out and replaced. But that's kind of important because, so I give them about a week to germinate. And if they haven't done anything at that point, like these ones I know for sure haven't done anything, so it's probably about time to put new seeds in them. You can put new seeds of the same exact variety in them, which I think is what I would like to do. Or you can just put a brand new different seed in them. There is kind of the risk that maybe the seed that was already in there is just late to germinate. Maybe it'll sprout later. However, you know, I just want the seeds. You know, especially where I'm at, the growing season is not year-round as far as outdoor growing, so getting as many plants outdoors and thriving as possible is my goal. So I do overplant. I don't really plan it out very well, like at all. Sometimes I do give away plants here and there because I just don't have all the room for it. But I do my best to make sure that, we're growing what we can and what we need and all that. So, I'm trying to think of any other questions to answer with that. Oh, as far as when to repot them or transplant them, I'm not going to really talk about transplanting into soil, like into a soil garden. I haven't done that in quite a while, so I can only, truly speak to what I know. And as far as container gardening is concerned, whether it be indoor or outdoor, doesn't really matter. Honestly, as long as the thing is sprouted and it's in something like this that can be portable, like this one, for instance, is definitely sprouted. You can wait until there's like a really big root cluster. You can see one little thing right there. It really doesn't have a huge amount of roots, and actually, I don't know if you can see. Yeah, you can. There's that little thing sprouting right there next to it as well. I usually put more than one seed in these. So that one is ready to, repot. And realistically, they would probably be ready to repot regardless. Like, I could probably put them in these, gosh, that's further away than I would like it to be. These aren't any, like, branded cups, but I have been converting these into starting pots. If you just drill a hole in a bunch of them, then they're a really nice size for that. You can probably start them in that, but the heat mat that I'm using is not gigantic, so I want to start them in these and then move them. And once they're sprouted, they don't need a heat mat, at least for most plants. So you can realistically transfer them at any point, and they should be fine. Just make sure when you're repotting or whatever that you don't cover too terribly much of that stem. I usually just try to put soil around these things and maybe a little on top depending on how I put it in the cup. But yeah, overall germinating seeds is a pretty easy thing, and it requires a little bit of patience, but once it gets going, it really does get going. If you have any questions, I would leave them in the comments. I do appreciate if you like this video, comment on it with anything, or subscribe. I do plan on making more plant and gardening relating videos. Honestly, I just like sharing it. I like sharing the whole thing. I guess you could say it's a lifestyle. Some consider it a hobby, whatever. I think growing food should be something that everyone does. So I like sharing it.